I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and we'd like to talk to you in the next few minutes about, isn't it great to be alive? And it is great to be alive, isn't it, Iris?
Yes, indeed it is. And sometimes we forget how wonderful it is and what a privilege it is to be here. Because it's a privilege because we need to assume our self-responsibility and get on with our lives and help others all we can. But that's when we feel the greatness of life. It's when we're contributing to the lives of others without interfering with those persons' lives.
And being happy within ourselves about life in general. And there, of course, we spend a lot of time on this program talking about how to deal with challenges and difficulties, and we're all going to deal with challenges and difficulties, but to really have within ourselves a joy for living. And I think that the key there is that word joy. And so many people that I come in contact with, and I know you do too in your counseling work and in the church work that we do, we find people that are just absent all joy.
Yeah.
That life is, there's no joy, there's no happiness, there's no spark, there's just nothing. And that's a sad situation.
Yes, it is sad, and sometimes that's our job. The people say it's not my job. Well, it's our job to help people regain their joy of life. And I think when just to give someone self-confidence is very often one of the most spiritually oriented things we can do, because if we give people self-confidence and then they regain that joy for living and the zest for life that they once had. And people come into this lifetime with lots of things to work through, and sometimes they lose track of what it is they're to do, and they then get bogged down in the problems of life, where if they stay centered and attuned to Creator God, then they know that whatever happens is happening for a reason, and they can see the entirety of the situation and instead of just looking at the pain. And when we look at the entirety of any situation, it's a totally different view, isn't it?
Absolutely. And sometimes it falls upon us and not on clergy and not on counselors or psychologists or mental health professionals or social workers, but on all of us to help people to understand that it is great to be alive,
Yeah.
and to begin to empower people who are otherwise defeated. And that in itself makes it great for us to be alive, that we can share that with other people. And I agree wholeheartedly with you on the issue of self-esteem and the way that people view themselves. And so often in life, we have the opportunity to help people that have been so badly damaged, either badly damaged at the inception of this life, the very beginning of their life, or damaged through their childhood and through their adolescence and through their adulthood. And of course, a lot of us know that, one of the great things about the women's movement has been that the consciousness and the value and the self-worth and self-esteem of women has been elevated so wonderfully. And so there are huge numbers of people who have been damaged and who have been held down, and for them, it's difficult to say it's great to be alive, but it's for those of us who know that it is and have something positive and affirmative to share with others. And of course, one of the greatest ways that we can is just in the simple way that you just brought out, and that's opportunities that we have to say to people how important they are, how valuable they are, how worthy they are of this life experience.
Yes, and validate people. And it doesn't hurt for us to do that, but we have to be sincere. But when we're sincere and truly validate another person, that is one of the most wonderful things we can ever accomplish. And just last week, a lady who's past retirement age was talking with me about her life, and she said that she wants to do less in the world, less things. And I said, you've reached the point in your life where if you just where you really inspire people, because she looks attractive and she keeps herself busy and she's always kind and thoughtful. To me, she is, but to her, she was not. And aren't we always our own worst critic? And so I said, I think perhaps you might just think that view your life as that you are here now to help and inspire other people, and you have the time to do that. When we're working and have a job that we have to go to every day, and we have employment that we have to fulfill, then we don't have time to write the notes and make the phone calls and reach out to people with little ways. And sometimes what seems like the smallest thing from us is really a very large thing to the recipient. Isn't that true?
That's absolutely true. And we think so often that our lives are so ordinary and insignificant.
Yeah.
Some people do. I don't. We
Yeah.
oughtn't to think that. But the ordinary and the seemingly insignificant things that we do can have profound impact upon other people's lives and can touch people in ways that we can't ever imagine. And I think one of the things that our church, that we're known for is hugging.
Yes.
We're the hugging church. And so people know that come to our church that at the beginning of every service, that's what we do. We greet each other, and we're big huggers. And so often that's a new experience for people. And some people don't like that physical contact, and we're respectful of that. But for many people, it's something that they really look forward to. And in our questionnaire that we sent out, it was one of the major high points in people's lives. But I've told the story so often about a lady, and we've done this for years in our church, and at gatherings, hugging and having physical contact. And a woman who I greeted during the beginning of a service some years ago, and she was a new person who came to church, and then she came to church subsequently and became a regular member. And she was an older woman, had lost her family, her children had grown and gone their way, her husband was gone, and she had lived a very reclusive and somewhat withdrawn life. And some months after she had come to church, she said, I just love to come to this church because of the hugging. And she said, you probably don't remember, but you were the first person that hugged me. And of course, I do try to hug new people. And she said, when you hugged me at that Sunday service was the first time that anyone had embraced me since my husband died 15 years ago. And so here's a woman, and she was seemingly a very positive and affirmative, radiant person. And yet that ability to connect with people and that level of intimacy, which is not inappropriate at all, was something that she hadn't been able to have. But just that simple act of hugging, and of course we know some people come to our church just because of the hugging, and so that ability to do that, or the ability to say a kind word or do a simple act like writing the note or making the telephone call, or simply telling someone that that they look good, and complimenting people in the workplace, talking to people in restaurants and waiters and waitresses and people who serve us. It never ceases to amaze me how transparent all of these wonderful people who serve us become in our lives, and we have such opportunities to acknowledge them and also to connect with them. And I found, the people at the car wash and the clerks at the store and the ladies or gentlemen at the cleaners to be the greatest people for interaction and to become good friends with. But those simple little things, those little bursts of kindness are really things that make it great for us to be alive, and then helps it to be great for other people to be alive.
Yes, and we need to follow our own inspiration. If we're inspired to do something, do it. Just last week, I was shopping for a gift, and I would use my store card for Macy's store, and it hadn't been used for 5 years, and so the girl said, "Well, your card is outdated. Would you like to have me reactivate it?" And I said, "Well, if you have time, what's a busier time than right now, this week, for any shopping for any clerk?" And she said, "Well, yes, it's a service we offer." So she did it, and then people came up and asked her questions, and she didn't lose her cool at all. And then she had to redo the ticket because she had to put my new credit card number on the ticket. So while I was standing there waiting for all these things to transpire, I saw a slip of paper that said evaluation of our salespeople. And so I just stood there and filled it out while she was doing her work. I filled that out. And so after we were through with my transaction, I said, "May I ask your name?" And she told me her name. And I said, I'm evaluating you. And I want you to know, I really appreciate all the extra work you went to today, because you didn't have to do all that. And I'm grateful to you for your help. And so her face lighted up, and she was just really radiant, because she did those things because that's what she was trained to help the customer. They're there to serve the people and do the best for the customer. Well, she did it, and without stinting. And that's a nice thing in life to come across people who go that extra mile. Now, we can do the same thing, and just, I did it that one time, but we should be doing constantly looking for ways that we can reach out to people and to make people's lives more light and light-filled. And our lives are more light-filled when we get personal attention in that way.
Mm-hmm. That concept of being light-filled is vibrant and alive in and of itself. And that might be a new concept to some of our viewers. It's certainly a part of our faith tradition, and we talk about a lot about that reality. But being light-filled is really the radiance of the divine within us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And have you observed that people will come up to you and say, I know that this has happened in your life many times. People will say, I always will remember what you told me about a certain circumstance. And you wonder what it was you told them. And sometimes I say, well, what did I tell you? And then they'll tell me, and I don't have an inkling of ever having said that. So this is acting from inspiration. And if we act from inspiration, we forget it because it's not something we labored over, but it just came through us. It came through us. And there's a big difference there, isn't there?
Absolutely, absolutely. The greatness of being alive and the great joy and the enthusiasm that we have for life isn't what comes out of us because of us. It's what comes out of us because of who we are. And who we are is limitless individuals who are divinely inspired and divinely created. And that limitless potential that we all have is something that can flow through us. And you put it so very, very well, that it's not something of our creation, it's something that flows through us. And as it flows out of us, it flows out in light, in affirmative action, in positive words, in good deeds, in absolute supportive thought. And as it flows out of us, it flows through us and out of us to other people, and then it flows back to us, doesn't it? And then this great joy and this great magnificence of being alive becomes so much a part and parcel of our being that even when we're faced with difficulty and challenge, and we all will be, we're able still to draw upon that light and still say, isn't it wonderful to be alive? And some of us, you and I as ministers and counselors as well, are often at bedsides or at gravesides when it's hard to say it's great to be alive. But it is. It's great to be alive, and we've been able to touch people's lives in so many wonderful ways, and it's not because of who we are. Everyone can do that in the midst of each and every circumstance and situation. And I think it's important to remember that it's great to be alive, but when people are faced with challenges, it's great to just be there and be alive with someone else. Just be present with them.
Yes, and that makes all the difference in the world. I remember when you did a memorial service for your sister's husband and her son, and someone said, what a gift you gave them. And it was a beautiful gift because you inspired them, and anytime we can do that, I'm sure you were more light-filled and happy when you went home than ever before, just because you had done something that was so inspiring for another human being. It wouldn't matter if it was your relative or someone else. And we can always look to God for guidance, and we're not necessarily putting the onus on God to do that for us, but to just look for the inspiration, and it always comes, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. And of course, memorial services, as you know, are one of my favorites. I enjoy memorial services because the one challenge that I feel so deeply at that time is to make people feel the reality that life has changed and it's not ended, and that life is great. It's great at the graveside and at the bedside of the dying, and those that are stepping into a new dimension of life. It's great when we're faced with challenges and difficulties. Life is always a great and wonderful experience, and if we can see that in the midst of our tears, then we can really be fully and completely alive. And we'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts we're sharing.
We would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought message of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
You know, before the break, we were talking about memorial services, and certainly we don't want to spend a lot of time talking about memorial services and passing from this life to the next. But you and I have really had a wonderful opportunity to see people in the end of their life, or who are faced with terminal or life-threatening diseases and illnesses, who were so vibrantly and radiantly alive, haven't we?
Yes, we have, and it's such a blessing that they're able to go out in that way, and it's such a blessing that we're able to observe this and just be a part of it. And also to see the families being lifted and inspired by that one who's going on, because it makes all the difference in the world in the family that's left behind. And also it makes all the difference in the world. What's really important to the individual who's going is that the consciousness with which they leave this body determines the consciousness with which they arrive on the inner planes of being. And a lot of people think, well, that seems strange, but a lot of things seem strange, but it's true. And the way they then enter into God's great kingdom is determined by the way they leave the earth, this earth life. And so then they can get on with life on the inner in a far more viable way. And when we think of it like that, it makes it worth working toward, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and we're all working toward that, and is what's going to happen in all of our experiences. Ultimately, we're going to come to the end of this life, and we're going to be radiantly alive in the next dimension of being, in the next experience that we're going to have. And having that assurance that life is eternal creates a vibrancy in our being, so that nothing... we may have momentary upsets. We may have momentary points and times of sadness and separation or loss or limit, but those are transient. And when we're able to embrace the reality of being fully alive and claim the greatness of being fully alive, then those circumstances and situations aren't quite as devastating, are they?
That's correct, but it makes us more accepting of what happens in life and of what life hands us, or what we gain or accomplish. But also, it makes us know that the person who's gone on is ever so much better off and ever so much happier, brighter, lighter, light-filled. And if we look at it like that, then death is really something to look forward to. I can remember when my mother and father-in-law died just 4 or 5 days apart, just before Christmas. They both died in December, just before Christmas, and my little stepdaughter went to school acting like, telling them about the death of her grandparents. And so her Sunday school teacher said to me, that something about them, and I said, oh, I hope something about her sharing all that with the other children. And I said, well, I hope that it didn't upset the children. I hope she didn't say things that upset the children. And she says, no, on the contrary, it made me think they all want to go, so they can see how wonderful it is they're on the inner. So I felt really relieved to know that I had helped my daughter face the death of her grandparents. But if we could all do that all the time, and we don't all do it all the time, but if we can do that all the time, the world is a much better place for our having been a part of the ongoing of someone, the transition of anyone, whether it's someone we know and love or someone who is just close to a person who's come to us for counseling and for help. And as we counsel and help others, then and inspire them, then it creates ever greater light in the world.
We come back to that issue of light again, which is so important. And we do have a radiance about us if we're full of the joy of living, and if we really truly feel that it's great to be alive. And if we do have that feeling, then that consciousness, and one of the things we talk a lot about in our faith and in our lectures and in this program, is about the fact that we live in our minds and not in the world. And so if we have a consciousness that feels that it's great to be alive, we have to then have a consciousness that is light-filled and that sees the world and everything about it in a positive way. And of course, in today's environment, we're more apt to hear people say, isn't it awful? Isn't the world awful? And to spend a lot of time thinking about the negative aspects. And certainly there are things that are difficult in the world. There are things that are wrong in the world, but there are so many more things that are right. And there are so many more things in this life that are great and grand and wonderful and marvelous than there are those that defeat us and harm us and hurt us. And it comes back to how our mind operates, what consciousness and level of consciousness we are exhibiting and demonstrating, and how it is we see the world and those around us. You know, one of the things that I think, the way that we see the world and those around us is a direct reflection of what we see in ourselves and in our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And so often when people see the negative everywhere, when there's gloom and doom and no joy and no spark and no light and no life in their being, then their relationship with themselves tends to be a negative one, and their relationship with the divine is almost non-existent. But when the opposite is true, when people have a healthy view of themselves and a healthy view of the reality of the divine spirit and presence of God, whatever that's defined to be according to their faith tradition, then that radiance comes out in light and life and the great joy of the greatness of being alive. And it is really great to be alive. But we know so many people who don't see it that way.
That's true. Unfortunately, it's too true. But if we each look to life as we are fulfilling a divine plan, and never mind that we helped create that divine plan, but Creator God really is back of all that is. And so then when we know that we're fulfilling a divine plan, I think then we're more at peace with whatever happens in our lives. And if we do, then we are accepting the divinity within others as well. And so that's the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we're seeing divine order in the midst of everything. And that's a very big part of our faith tradition. And we spend a lot of time talking about seeing beyond appearances. So when someone says a cross word or does a deed that is not positive or affirmative, we see beyond that appearance. When there's chaos, when there's limit, when there's lack, when there's loss, we see divine order in the midst of that circumstance. It may be with our human eyes and our human ears, we see a negative experience, but as New Thought metaphysicians, we know that divine order and the divine plan of life is constantly moving through this experience. And if we can but see it and grasp it, even though we don't see it yet fully with our human eyes, then we can create that manifestation and we can bring it about and we can see the reality of divine order in the midst of every situation. And one of the challenges that we have and one of the things that we teach so strongly is to see that divine order, even if we can't see it with our human eyes, to know it's there, to know, and in the midst of confusion, that's when we need it. In the midst of our depression or our limit or our loss or our hurt, that's when we need it. In the midst of our lack, we need to see prosperity, and we need to have that vision, and we need to be able to claim it.
Yes. And also we need to create a plan, an alternate plan in life. Whatever it is we see going awry in our life, then we need to create an alternate plan. And as we do that, then we're more able to accept what life hands us, because then we don't get bogged down in the problems, but we're planning for the future. And anytime we're planning something new and different, then it gives us, our spirits, a lift, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And New Thought teachers for 100 years have taught us to see the good in every situation. So to see that in every situation, something good's going to come out of this. I don't know what it is. I don't know what good is going to come when I lose the job or when the relationship is stressed or when there's not enough money to pay the bills, but I know there's some great good that's coming out of this. And if we can live from that perspective, then we really can say it's great to be alive, because even though at the moment it appears that there's great challenge or difficulty, it's great to be alive because we know that out of this something good is going to come, something wonderful is going to come.
Yes, and if we do know that, then we act accordingly, and we create whatever it is we need to create, whatever it is. And whatever it is in life that we need, we can create. And again, we use the term faith a great deal, but isn't faith the bottom line?
It is. And this co-creative power, you know, of the fact that God created us in His image. And so the creative power of God is united with our own creative power. And so in New Thought, so often we say we are co-creators with God, and of course some people gasp at that, but they'll get over it. But our belief is that, of course, we are co-creators and that we have an obligation to create in a positive and affirmative way the environment in which we live, the circle of friends that we have, the job and the relationships that we have. And so it isn't leaving it all to God, it is taking our own responsibility in the creative process and being co-creators with God and co-creators with all of those around us to make life a more positive and affirmative experience.
Yes, and then when we inspire others to do whatever it is they need to do. And what they need to do is what they feel inside themselves they need to do. They just need that strength and that self-confidence that they will accomplish whatever it is, whatever is needed.
Right.
And so then it's around robin. We feel empowered, and then they feel empowered. And then the people they deal with feel empowered. And it's a wonderful thing to know that the life is an upward spiral. Mm-hmm. It's always an upward spiral. We're not just going in circles, and we're not just going around the hill. We're going in an upward spiral. And isn't it wonderful to know that?
It is, absolutely, and it's very important for us to understand that. Dr. Garlish, who was the founder of our fellowship, used to say that life is ebbing in unceasing progression. And so it's saying the same thing. It's spiraling upward. There's never any backward motion. Mm-hmm. We're ebbing forward. We're moving forward in unceasing progression. Mm-hmm. And to see that, and also before time gets away and we're coming to the end, but we need to also let people experience, or we must let people experience what they need to experience. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's hard and painful. But that is the way that life is, because what Iris needs and what Mike needs and what everyone needs is unique to themselves. And while you and I are close and good and intimate friends, I respect the fact that your life is what it has to be and my life is what it has to be. And so when you have hurts or difficulties or challenges, I can have compassion and I can have empathy, but I also have to let you go through the process and let you work it out yourself. I can help you, I can talk to you, I can pray with you, I can do a lot of things, but we need to let other people, we need to release other people and let them deal with life in the way that they need to. And sometimes that means letting them go through a lot of pain and suffering. And it doesn't mean abandoning them, but it does mean that we can't decide what's best for them. And then when we begin to decide what's best for other people, then we short circuit the it's great to be alive, because then those people are saying, well, it's not so great to be alive anymore because he or she's telling me what to do. So we have to let people go and we have to let them experience what they need.
Exactly, because why are we here on earth but to experience whatever it is we experience. And if we try and take that away from others, then we're taking away their birthright. And I think it's exciting to see the young parents today who are treating their children differently than a generation or two ago, because they let them do. I know a young mother who said, well, he has to learn. And so she let her baby learn that he's going to tumble. If he gets on the sofa and sits too close to the edge, he has to fall off. And so that might seem very cruel, but children have to learn from experience, and they learn very quickly. It's amazing how quickly. And I think that's part of the upward spiral of civilization, of humanity, because these young babies today are so bright and so knowledgeable, and they learn so very quickly.
They learn and we learn.
Yes.
And life is really great and magnificent, and it's wonderful to be alive. It's a great time to be alive, and we hope that you feel that it is great to be alive, and we hope that the information we've shared with you today has been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Mike and Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.